My disappointment is immeasurable and my day is ruined. Not that I think I'd ever do this, but and not to do this again. This has already been done. But if I had to, I don't think I could be here talking about books if I didn't do the obligatory jab at Twilight. I remember when Twilight came out, I was probably in middle school, perhaps, and I remember specifically somebody reading it because it was the hot new book, and I was interested, I was intrigued, but I knew it was romance. It wasn't really something I was that into. The years following it, I did read them. I devoured them because they were kind of interesting. I'll give them that. I don't know. I can't remember if they were especially well written, but I liked the idea of vampires, by the way, already. So, but it wasn't until maybe around the same time, maybe later, maybe before, there was something else I read along the same vein that has stayed with me a lot longer than Twilight. And I can fully say now, after all this time has passed, after I have reread the books, that yes, it is a better love story than Twilight. There, I said it. I said the thing. What am I talking about to be exactly? I don't know if many people know of it. I don't keep any tabs on things like this, especially things I like personally. I like to kind of I don't like to socialize with them. I like to keep my interests to myself, but I am talking about Ellen Schreiber's Vampire Kisses. While other people were losing their shit over Twilight, this is the shit that stayed with me. I don't think I lost my shit over this, but the shit stayed with me far longer than any page of Twilight. What's it about? Same kind of thing. Girl meets boy, boy is vampire. Will boy turn her into vampire? Maybe. I don't know. We need to find out. But obviously, I can say for sure that this is done incredibly better than Twilight does it. But the time I was reading this, the whole series hadn't come out. There's 9 books. I dropped off at about 5, maybe. And so when October had come around this year and I started doing something like this, Vampire Kisses came back up in my mind. I don't think it ever left, and I think it just went dormant. So I was like, hey, maybe I can finally finish the series and do a proper series review on it. Or I guess review? I don't know. I guess I wanted to talk about it. And boy, do I have a lot to talk about. I just finished Immortal Hearts last Friday, 2 days ago or so. I can't remember. Time is an illusion. And I thought I was ready to talk about it, but honestly, I had to compile some notes. I'm doing notes again, just like my last video. If you couldn't tell, that wasn't any better. I will try again this time. This is the 3rd time I've recorded this, by the way, because I kept realizing my initial notes weren't as good. Anyway, so I did it. This took a little longer than I thought, but I did it. Was it worth it? Maybe. Am I glad I did it? Am I glad it's over? Yes. Not for the reasons I was hoping. This is a lot. I have over 8 pages of notes here. There's 9 books. There's a lot to cover. Let's just get into it. I don't have a lot to say about the first one because it is really that good. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I loved rereading it. It is like a cool little slice of day in the life versus meets some plot. We follow our protagonist, Raven Madison. She grows up in this upper middle class town. She's the only goth girl. No one understands her. No one gets her. She's the odd one out. But she's great. She embraces it. She knows it. She loves it. She just wish she had some companionship. So when a mysterious stranger moves into the mansion, in town, and she hears it's a teenage guy. She's interested. She's curious to see who would move into an old creepy abandoned mansion. Spoiler alert, not spoiler alert, it's a vampire. But we don't find that out until actually like the second book. So if there's one thing I have to praise the most of all of this series, that's wrong because I don't want to mislead you, of the first book is its pacing. It is so well done. I savored every moment of it. The way Ellen Schreiber lays out plot and background information, it doesn't feel like an info dump. It feels like it is all purposeful to get to know key characters. Some names you should know are Raven, of course, Becky, her best friend, Trevor Mitchell, her longtime rival, dash nemesis, dash weird feelings about. Some other people, Alexander, Sterling, the love interest, Jameson, his butler, of course, and I think that's it. I think those are who we're working with so far. I really love Raven as a main character. It was really fun to follow her along through this. Her personality to me is so unique, especially for this time. Like when this was written, she is like an incredibly independent, smart, funny, witty teenager. And I enjoyed reading about like the stuff kind of outside of the romance too. It made me fall in love with her, like, you know, her personality inside and outside of like the main plot of this. So it was like, you know, it was worth tagging along with her. I don't want to keep comparing this to Twilight because I haven't read Twilight in like years, but a huge like criticism I know from the series is that you know, the main cast of characters is they're pretty flat, they're pretty bland, or that they're controlling and manipulative. None of what you see in Twilight is ever found, I would say, in this series. Raven is very much her own person through and through. Alexander, the eventual love interest, is very much his own person through and through. They go about their relationship respectfully. They don't push boundaries. They're very thoughtful in their actions, and never once does like you get the sense that Raven loses herself in this new relationship and that Alexander is trying to control her. It's really just so refreshing, and I think as like a young adult teen romance book, it really does set some. The first book, I need to reemphasize that the first book set some really great, I think, examples. So a couple favorite things from this is that I kind of forgot about, kind of didn't in this book, was the Halloween party. And the Halloween party, I'm kind of amazed like this happened because I feel like in any other handling or context, this could have been considered quite risque, a little spicy even. So this does two things. It shows both Raven and Trevor's characters and personality. So at this Halloween party, Raven flips the script. She doesn't dress as like her usual dark clothes and makeup. She goes blonde. She wears like a tennis sweater. She takes a tennis racket, little skirt. It's because it's Halloween. Trevor, who's a rich, he's upper middle class, rich, douchey rich, and he throws a Halloween party. Of course, no adults are in sight. And she and her best friend Becky is very shy. She is like unassuming. She actually relies on Raven for protection. It's very cute. They go and crash his party in as much as a way that they can crash it, I suppose. There's never anything really explicit on page, but they say the kids are drinking beer. They're kids. They're like 16 at this point. They're drinking beer. They're hooking up. So Raven just wants to come and they don't do anything like that, but Trevor finds out that Raven is there and he's a little buzzed, and he does this thing where he kind of teases her, kind of flirts with her, she's had enough of it. He is really a douchebag, and she's done with it. She kind of takes advantage of like what she knows. She's like, oh, he's kind of into me. So she lures him into the woods behind his house. This could go a lot of different ways. I promise it doesn't sound as bad. Maybe she lures him into the woods, and he's thinking they're about to hook up, that they're about to get together, that they're about to do the deed. Instead, she like tricks him into taking off all his clothes. So he's in the woods with her, behind a tree, butt ass naked, and she steals all his clothes, runs back to the house, and then dumps him. She leaves him in the dark. He has to walk back to his house by himself, naked, in front of everybody. I'm not saying what she did is right. I'm not saying what she did was okay. I'm just saying it was a serve. Like, I don't understand. How could he, like, keep, like, messing with her after that point? If you were tormenting someone, like, teasing someone, or, like, and someone did that to you, how could you recover? Like, how was his ego not just destroyed? But yeah, so luckily it keeps it all, like, it's pretty PG, I would say. Another thing I really like upon retrospect in reading this, I know Raven says a lot of the time that she feels very misunderstood by her parents, and even her parents say, "Yeah, we don't, maybe we don't understand your vibe, your style." There is so many wholesome moments like wrapped up in this, and that's the thing that's significant about Vampire Kisses. The wholesome and thoughtful moments don't just stem from the romantic relationships. They stem from the friendships. They stem from the community. They're like her peers and classmates. They stem from her parents. So Trevor, inspired, of course, by the Halloween debacle to get back at her, starts spreading rumors that the people that moved into the mansion are vampires. This is all malicious. It's a small town. Gossip runs fast, and it because this is upper middle class, it makes them look like weirdos. Of course, no one in their right mind is going to believe that, but it makes them look like outsiders. Raven's parents do the sweetest thing. They actually throw a welcome party for the people at the mansion, like right at their house. It's so nice and thoughtful. Everyone dresses in black, everyone puts on black eyeliner, that kind of, they just go all out for it. And I just thought, like, those moments of, like, yes, they say they don't understand her, but they make efforts like this to try to understand her, are just so damn cute. I don't know how to say it. Maybe it's because I'm a parent now, but I really loved the dynamic about this. And so, Alexander, the teenager that lives in the mansion, he feels welcomed, he feels invited, and yeah, that kind of temporarily squashes some of the animosity. All right. Oh, we're just beginning. Down. All right. Second book. So the book ends on a cliffhanger. Obviously, I hate to spoil it for you. Alexander is a vampire, but the book ends on a cliffhanger. It's of Raven looking into a mirror compact to check something, and Alexander's behind her, but she doesn't see him in the mirror. Vampire confirmed, but he doesn't say this. So that confession actually comes in book 2, Kissing Coffins. The second book is also really fun. We finally get a chance to see the world outside of the self-proclaimed Dullsville and go to Hipsterville, as Raven calls it, to search for Alexander. She found a mysterious note in his room soon after that party that said, like, he's coming, very cryptic, very thing. And so now this dude she just met, they had a date, he's gone. They seem to have hit it off really well, and she was into him, but he kind of just left her, not much of for a good reason. So she's obviously upset. She's brooding about this. She's, trying to comfort herself watching her favorite goth movies, and it's not working. So what does she do? She figures out, because she worked for Armstrong Travel, where, like, she geolocates, figures out, and then again, in any other context, this might be a little creepy, but she figures out where Alexander and Jameson, the butler, went based off of like a flower delivery that was delivered to Armstrong Travel for Ruby, because Jameson, the old creepy butler, is into this gal. She like triangulates where the roses came from and figures out that they're from this town, and it's a town her aunt lives in. So coincidentally, she's like, "Hey, I want to go visit my aunt." I mean, this is a pretty cool example of her maybe her tenacity, or you could call it stubbornness. So the visits with my aunt, there's like two, I think, are my favorite, because she is also a fun and quirky character. She's a hippie, whereas like when her parents stopped, Raven's parents stopped being hippies, Aunt Libby kept it going. She's single, she lives in the city, she has her apartment, she works at a vegan restaurant, truly dances to the beat of her own drum. And so they have a connection to it. And it's really cute. Again, this emphasis of in this book of relationships in the family, in like within family outside of the romantic one, I think are super valuable. So it's here that she goes in. Raven, when she's in town, hangs out with her aunt for a bit, but she finds out there is the Coffin Club. That's what we're introduced to. An alt hub that's unlike any Raven's ever seen or been to before, because there's nothing like it, of course, in Bellsville. Wink, wink, wink. And to kind of build off her audacity. So remember, she ditched Trevor in the woods naked. She triangulated where a delivery of flowers was coming from to find out where they were sent from. And now she gets into, I kid you not, she gets into this club with a fake ID. She knows there is going to be a club like she might have to get into. So before she left, she asks a 10-year-old who does shit like this to make her a fake ID. It's, in any other context, maybe I'd be like, this is weird, but it's so fun. It's so fun in these books. So she gets into the club with a fake ID and all. She never drinks. She comes up with like really cool. She comes up with like, oh, I'm driving tonight, can't make a drink. She's really witty, and she meets Jagger Maxwell. And to say he is the antagonist is kind of a misleader here, because there's nothing really antagonizing about him. So let me set it up for you. He has white hair with red tips. He has heterochromia, a blue eye and a green eye, and he's all punk. I have a lot more comments about him later. Let me just say that. Okay, so she meets him instead of Alexander, and he actually overhears her asking about Alexander, and then she's like, maybe this isn't a good idea. I think I should leave right now. And it turns out it's Jagger who was the reason why Alexander left. He's the dude in the context of the note. It turns out the Sterling family and the Maxwell family are in a feud because Alexander was supposed to turn Jagger's twin sister Luna into a vampire, because vampires are, oh, by the way, vampires are mainly born. You can be born a vampire, but you can also be made a vampire. So it said that one baby was born a vampire, Luna was born mortal because of a grandmother on one side of the family, and Alexander was supposed to turn her into a vampire and then be with her for all eternity. But Alexander bailed her at the altar because he didn't love her, which continues to not make more sense the longer this series goes on. I will maybe get into that at some point. I don't know. But this introduces maybe, like, on retrospect, this introduces maybe the first problem to it. the idea of covenant ceremonies, which is different from turning someone into a vampire, by the way. You can just do that and then not be bonded with them. But if you're turned into a vampire during a covenant ceremony, or a covenant ceremony in general, if you're already a vampire and for some reason you are bonded with this person for, ever, and I don't know the intricacies of, I don't know the ins and outs and the details about that, like how does that work? It never goes into why this happens, so we're just gonna go with it. Maybe. Like, that's so Jagger just followed Alexander to America to get revenge. I guess. I mean, yeah, it's kind of a dick move to leave someone at an altar. But it doesn't sound like Alexander had a lot of say in this, and to be honest, we never get more context about the situation. Yeah. So, eventually, Alexander and Raven do meet up again, and the feud is explained, the conflict is explained, and they're like, okay, we gotta go. I think I let Jagger know, you're still here. I talked to him when I shouldn't have. But then Jagger follows them back home. So he finally, like, the whole point is that now that Jagger knows that Raven exists and that she's so important to Alexander, they think that Jagger's going to try to get back at Alexander by turning Raven into a vampire and bonding them for all eternity. So, yeah. They say Jagger is a threat, but he never does anything really dangerous. Like I said, this book really doesn't, like, push it in terms of explicitness, even in terms of violence. Like, there's at no point is anyone in this book turned into a vampire. Like, no unsuspecting mortal, no one's killed, no animal is harmed. I get that they're trying to establish a sense of danger and threat, but there is no evidence ever stated on page that this is the case. If that was to be done, I think it was this book to do it, or at least strongly allude to danger, if, like, maybe the publisher was concerned about having too much violence on page. I don't know. But again, this is a teen romance book, so we're going to give a little leeway here. Speculating Jagger's plan, Alexander and Raven actually come up with a little skit into tricking him into thinking Raven has already been turned by acting along a bite scene from a vampire flick at the drive-in. And apparently that's enough to deter him right now. And it's a aw shucks moment. Sure, why not? I'll buy it. I guess that's one way to end a feud. I don't know. Yeah, okay. Kissing Coffins, really fun, enjoyable read. A good sequel, I'd say. Book 3, Vampireville. I'm going to try to follow my notes this time. The more I go along, the more thorough they get, so bear with me. I'm sorry. Vampireville. So, remember it said Jagger had a twin sister, Luna? Yeah. She shows up now. I didn't say this. I'm sorry. At the end of the last book, they're at a carnival, and Alexander and Raven see Trevor with this pink goth girl. I think it's supposed to be describing, like, Lolita, like, fashion sense. It's Luna, Jagger's twin sister, who's a vampire, by the way, now. And she was the one spurned by Alexander, and so now they think she wants to get with Trevor. As a way to get back at Alexander? I don't know. But yeah, even though she's already turned, she wants to be bonded with someone for eternity and seems interested in Trevor. It's kind of alluded to early on that Trevor is only with her because she reminds her of Raven. That's its own long-standing problem. The main conflict is that if more vampires are in town, the more unsafe it will be for everyone. But I feel like it's mainly motivated by the fact that Raven doesn't want someone else to be turned before her. Their hunt and search for Jagger and Luna's coffins are really fun. I think Ellen Schreiber has this a good sense of building tension, and you're really excited following along of them trying to narrow down places on where they could be. You know, after the jig is up, Jagger and Luna realize that they've been found. There's this really, I'd say there's this moment Raven has with Luna when they start talking, and it seems like they could have been friends if the circumstances were different. This leads into my theory, which I will divulge on at the end of this, that a bigger theme that could have taken place in this series would have been Raven's ability to create or find connections with people who are also social outcasts. Later, when Luna finds out Raven is still mortal, she doesn't try to still be friends with her like she did, and I feel like we lost some character development at that point. Like, this schism between vampires and mortals is only ever really bridged by Raven, and it becomes very apparent that Raven wants to be a vampire. So I really wished a theme of coexistence had more of it placed on, and I think it would have been iconic for Raven to be the one to settle this feud with Luna and like be the one to reach out and understand her and her pain in terms of feeling rejected by the world and by someone she really wanted to be with. The climax of this story leads to Trevor, who's dating Luna, to throwing a party in the graveyard where he says he and Luna are gonna reenact a fake covenant ceremony. Joke's on everyone because the ceremony is actually supposed to be for Raven and Jagger because he's still on about that. Teenagers, man, they're spiteful, I guess. They obviously don't get away with this. The vampire's downfall in this is garlic pills taken by the soccer players because Raven lied to Trevor and said that garlic pills were like aphrodisiacs or something. And so when they try to do the ceremony and the sock and like, you know, Trevor shows up and it realizes that like there's a scent of garlic everywhere. That's it. The jig is up, I guess. With their plan exposed and Trevor humiliated, the twins disappear. They think their problems are gone until they find out from Raven's little brother Billy that Valentine, Jagger and Luna's little brother, is in town. So, all right, that's the gist of book 3. Book 4, Dance with a Vampire. I love these covers, by the way. I've noticed that like up till book 5, these are all published by like Harper Teen, and they have like these kinds of covers, and then after they're published by Catherine Teagan imprint, you start to get like these covers. I don't know what the story is about that. I don't know if there was like a change in contract or something, but I really still like love like the first 5 covers. Anyway, sorry. So Dance with the Vampire. Raven and Alexander are mistrustful of 12-year-old Valentine. Yes, he is 12 years old. Yes, I have comments to say about that. Because he's starting to hang out with Billy, Raven's brother, and Henry, Billy's best friend. Incidentally, at the same time when this is happening, this nerdy pair have started a school project about vampires. That will be relevant later. The concept of vampire powers are introduced in this book, but then they are never again divulged on or elaborated on, ever. I'm not joking. This is the extent of it within this book, within this character. I don't know if she did this to be open-ended about it, to like leave possibilities open, but apparently it's a thing. Yeah, if you had removed it entirely from the book, it would have made a difference to the story. Their friendship begins to escalate when Valentine lures Billy and Henry to an abandoned sports center or something, and tries to make a blood brother pact with the 2 kids. The detail involving why someone would want to even do this is scant. I don't know if that would mean Billy and Henry would be turned into vampires or bonded to Valentine for eternity, like a covenant ceremony, but platonic. The purpose and motivation for this seemed really silly, but whatever. Raven and Alexander stop the whole thing before anything happens anyway. There's also been this build up to a Valentine's Day themed prom that Raven has been helping her best friend Becky decorate. There's this shopping montage where Raven is looking for a dress, and there's this really great moment she has with her mom when, while they're shopping, the mom realizes she's kind of been pushing dress choices on Raven the same way her mom used to push dress choices on her. It's this really nice moment of understanding initiated by a parent. It was really nice to see this understanding initiated by a parent. Such a rare thing to see parents, and especially moms to their daughters, reach out and apologize and empathize with their kid, especially when parents come at it with they have only the best intentions. Prom doesn't go according to plan though, because while all they're busy trying to avoid taking pictures because vampires can't show up on film, Raven is suspicious that Trevor is up to no good again. In the first book, he had previously sabotaged the snowball. I don't know what that was, and kind of embarrassed Alexander in front of everybody. But Trevor also kind of made an ass of himself, so Raven's suspicious that he's going to do something again. Of course, he does. He absolutely does. But in the most non-destructive and selfish way possible. He basically rigs the prom queen nomination to crown Raven, so she has to dance with him in front of the whole school and her boyfriend. Not to mention Trevor's date. So he's really just kind of a dick. Technically harmless, but nonetheless a dick move. Meanwhile, as Raven is trying to comfort Alexander and try to insist that it's all a mistake, Henry, the Billy Boy's best friend, comes to the school to tell them that Billy's missing. He snuck away from being grounded to go see Valentine. They're afraid because they don't know how Valentine has been sustaining himself. Remember, vampires need blood. They think he's just gonna bite Billy. There's this mini conflict, if you could call it that, in a cave that Valentine has been staying in. More resentment is revealed about the failed covenant ceremony for the sister, but then Valentine collapses because he hasn't been drinking blood. He's also literally 12 years old and Alexander is 17. Again, not much conflict going on here. Vampire or not, he's still a kid. The book ends when Alexander has to leave town to go to Hipsterville to drop off Valentine at Jagger's Club. And Raven is a big sad because it's dangerous, and Alexander just wants to do it to keep her safe. You know how this is gonna go. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get through all of this. We're maybe not even at the halfway point already. Okay, so book 5, The Coffin Club. This is probably my favorite book, and only for maybe a couple of moments. Raven once again follows Alexander to Hipsterville because she does. I can see how that might be kind of an annoying trait where Alexander's truly just trying to look out for her best interest, but Raven isn't the kind of person to sit on the sidelines while conflict is going down, and I appreciate that about her character. Do you remember in Twilight where Bella just sits in her room for 3 months? Yeah, no, Raven wouldn't tolerate that shit whatsoever. She'd track that fucker. But they don't have cell phones, by the way, let me just say that. So they can't call or text each other. Apparently Raven has a phone, but apparently Alexander doesn't. Sure. Okay, why not? Whatever. Okay, I'll let it fly. She meets up with her aunt again, and they hang out while Raven makes excuses to search town and go to the Coffin Club to find Alexander. But mostly because she also just likes it there. It's a place where she can, vibe with other people and dance and just kind of have a good time. This time, though, she is successful in her search because she does find Alexander, not at the club, but in a similarly abandoned house in town. Alexander has reunited Valentine with his siblings, and they're about ready to leave. Raven is kind of torn though because she doesn't really want to leave quite yet. She likes hanging out at the Coffin Club, especially after her last discovery when she found out there is a club underneath the club called the Dungeon, and that is solely occupied by vampires. Of course. How Raven gets into the dungeon, by the way, is so much fun. It's so ballsy and charismatic. She is just so good at BSing and bluffing her way in. I know maybe some people might find it unrealistic, but I love it when she does stuff like that. She's so good at pulling stuff out, like pulling excuses out of thin air that are so convincing. I love it. She never seduces anyone, by the way. She's never tries to be seductive about it. Just she's pure old wit and charm. God damn, I'm a sucker for it. While in the dungeon, she meets two vampire girls, Onyx and Scarlet, and becomes really fast friends with them, despite them not realizing that Raven isn't a vampire. They're two of my favorite characters, by the way. I really like them. I feel like they really they add some nice dynamic to it. There's no girl hate in this book. In these books, I wanna say a big kudos to that. And it's really refreshing. The story could have taken that angle a couple of times, but it never does, because that's not who Raven is. I love the description of Onyx's coffin, by the way, with the blanket and the iPod and the stuffed animal. It's just such a very human touch. It was actually thinking of that moment from this book that made me want to reread the series. So it's just, I don't know, it's just so cool. So while she's in the dungeon, a new character, but not really, because we'll get into it, is introduced. Phoenix Slater. At first, she's suspicious of him because she doesn't know if he's like Jagger or a friend of his, but after spying on him, arguing with Jagger in a crop circle, long story, she changes her mind about him. Yes, crop circles are actually made by vampires looking for a rave, by the way. She didn't know. He seems to be Jagger's opponent because Jagger wants to reveal the hidden vampire club to the public, but some vampires don't want that to happen. Raven thinks this is a problem, but feels like she can't tell Alexander what's happening because he asked her not to go to the club because Jagger's there. Before they inevitably leave town, Raven, her aunt's new boyfriend, and Alexander go to the Hipsterville Art Festival, partially motivated by the suspicion that Aunt Libby's new boyfriend might himself be a vampire, but that's quickly dropped off on. He isn't, by the way. He's just super handsome and mysterious, which honestly, go on, Libby. You get it. Alexander also surprises Raven by revealing he entered the art festival's painting contest, which is why he was away longer than expected, and his painting of Raven, a portrait of her, won an award. Alexander is getting ready to go back home when Raven makes one last trip back to the dungeon where the club is holding a vote to see who should be in charge of the Coffin Club, who should make the executive decisions about what the club does and doesn't do. Raven, still BSing her way through all of this, casts a vote in the matter by pricking her finger, and you gotta use your blood. Imagine if we did that for our elections. Holy shit. So, of course, Jagger doesn't win this. He loses in majority, but when he does lose, he spills the beans on Raven. I guess in an effort to try to, like, null and void her contribution, but it's still a lost cause. He still would have lost anyway. Even without her vote, the club nominates Phoenix for what? I don't know. Again, I have a lot of I have some problems with the dynamic of the Coffin Club, but story, okay, that doesn't matter. Somehow Phoenix gives ownership over to the club members somehow. I still really don't think it solves all the problems like he thinks it would, but whatever. Yet Raven is cornered by vampires when they want to turn her because now she knows their secret and she can't technically leave, or else they don't trust her to not spill the beans. Phoenix, however, speeds in with his motorcycle and rescues her at the very last minute for dropping her off in front of her aunt's apartment. There's this kind of a tense moment between them when Phoenix flirts with her, but she ultimately rejects it and instead just leaves on good terms. I think she gives him a hug, and like that's the end of it. But she still feels really guilty about what all happened. She still hasn't told Alexander, so she's been lying to them, and she's uncomfortable by this moment between her and this guy. So she runs to the place where Alexander and Jameson have been staying, only to find them gone. It's not until she looks in the garage at the back of the place where, instead of Alexander's car, she sees a motorcycle. And who's there, so you may guess? It's Phoenix. No, wait. It's Alexander in a wig. Surprise, he was Phoenix the whole time. So that's where like their chemistry was coming off of. So he knew she was visiting the whole time. He knew what Jagger was up to this whole time, and a big reason why he was staying longer than he had to was to settle this disagreement. Sure, whatever, I'll allow it. So I don't know if Schreiber had plans to end the series here, or if she purposely kept it open-ended because she didn't know if she would continue or not, because it very much ends. It's the first book in about 4 books now where the ending isn't a cliffhanger into like the next conflict. So I was really curious if maybe there was a contract negotiation, or something like that, and it was open ended whether this would continue or not. It obviously did, because there's another book. This was published in 2008, which checks out, which is probably the last time I read this, and then this came out in 2009, so it seemed like there wasn't a huge gap in between it. Book 6, Royal Blood. This is an interesting part because remember, 10 years ago I last dropped off at the Coffin Club. This going forward, this is all first time reading these. We find out that in this book, Alexander's parents are coming back to the mansion. Yes, they've been gone almost this whole time. Now Alexander hasn't even talked a smidge about his family, his relatives, or his life back home. So we feel just as much in the dark about this as Raven does. I really don't know how it's possible that they could have been together this long. I think it's been a couple months where family doesn't come up, like about his parents, about what they do, what were their names, where are they from, what are his like, I really don't know, but whatever, vampires and all that bullshit. Okay. Alexander's dad is apparently an art dealer, and I think the mom is just a gothic homemaker, I suppose. I can't remember. The dad doesn't believe Alexander can become a professional artist, and that's a source of tension between the two that they haven't really resolved quite yet. I don't know. I'm kind of confused because, like, okay, if you don't think he's going to be an artist, what do you think he's going to be? Like, if you run an art galleries and an art dealer, like, what's the disapproval coming from? You obviously don't disapprove art. You're obviously not against him being an artist. But, like, it doesn't say that he has, like, another career path in mind for him, so I don't know why, like, he at least doesn't, like, just what's the point? If you don't think he's an artist, like, are you disappointed he's not, like, becoming an art dealer to become a businessman? I don't know. So Raven, she meets them for the first time and she gets along with them because she's, that's just what her personality's like. Despite, and they do know she is mortal. I think Alexander talked about them. I think Alexander talked about her to them. So they're aware, and I think they're cool with it. The parents don't really have much personality here besides being vampires and mysterious because it's the first time we meet adult vampires. People, like, again, over the age of 18. So I get it, they're not the focus of the story. I didn't dislike them. I didn't think they took away anything from the characterization that was happening, but I was not captivated by them. This is the first sign of the lack of diversity in vampires the books show. Why not create parallels? And it turns out Alexander's the one who dresses differently from everybody. Something. Yes, this is the first indication of a big problem I have with this series that I will continue to elaborate on. This book, and specifically, along with the lack of vampire diversity, starts another problem that I will continue to have. So Raven has to do this junior year project that makes her think about her future beyond high school. Of course, Alexander is on her mind, but she makes some compelling ideas about wanting to pursue a career in either design or publishing to become like a magazine editor. She describes it as she would love to curate or design or write her own like gothic fashion magazine. And I think that's so cool. I think that is so interesting. These are such cool concepts, but she doesn't give them any more thought beyond this book. And I really, really wish this had been a pivotal moment for Raven to think about herself more realistically. To fall in love with an idea of herself as a mortal as much as her feelings for Alexander. This would have seriously made her think more carefully about approaching the subject of vampirism and actually displayed a level of maturity I know she is capable of. I think that this is where the disappointment starts to come in for me, is that I think she's starting to make decisions in this series where I know perhaps earlier on she wouldn't have. And it's really hard as the reader to see something that's there that your main character doesn't. True love remains and continues to be a strong driving factor, and I wish it had done otherwise. There's this cute family scene where Alexander's parents and him come over to Raven's house for dinner, and it seems so wholesome. Raven's mom makes pasta. She made, no garlic bread, of course, but it's so cute having like this gothic pair and their son come to like a middle class suburban home to eat pasta. I don't know. It's just really cute, and they love it. They love like seeing like the Madison's lifestyle. They love talking about sports. They love talking about things, and it's just I thought it was a really cute moment. How on earth at this dinner? How on earth is there no more divulging into the Sterlings as a family is beyond me, considering a very important character is left out of the stories. If it was supposed to come out anywhere, it should have come out here. And I really wish at least a name had been dropped so that we could have made some connections. But again, I'm willing to. So everyone is getting along. Raven is feeling better about them being in town, when suddenly the next day in the newspaper she finds out that they only came back to town to sell the mansion and move back to Romania. She's obviously heartbroken and devastated. Alexander just found out too after talking with his parents and has been trying to convince them otherwise, but so far no luck. Raven schemes up an idea when she learns that the house is on the market, is to, and I don't know if this is a great idea, to spread gossip through the town that the mansion is unlivable, so nobody wants to place an offer for it. But that backfires when Trevor's dad, that douchebag, two douchebags, a guy who he apparently owns most of the real estate in town, then wants to buy the place so he can demolish it and like put up a shopping center or something. All seems lost until Alexander comes up with a pretty impressive big brain move to prevent this. He decides he is the one who's going to buy the house from his parents. And after he turns 18, he is going to use his inheritance from his grandmother, the woman who built that house to begin with, to pay on the mortgage. All he has to do now is come up with enough money to cover the down payment and other closing costs associated with it. That's when Raven suggests that Alexander enter his paintings into an upcoming art auction in Bellsville to raise money for it. I don't know how auctions work, but I assume, like, besides like a fee you have to pay. Yeah, I don't know what the payout for that looks like. Raven gets in good with Trevor because his mom is the one who basically runs the auction, and she gets the paintings under in. There's no problem with that. She doesn't say his name though. She just says it's a unknown up and coming unknown artist from Europe. So that kind of helps get him in. At the auction, Alexander's paintings sell really well despite no one knowing who the artist is. There's a bidding war to create some tension, so you're like, oh, I hope this is going to work. It's really fun. And they do manage to come up with enough money at the end. Trevor is a big old fucking weirdo, and that he actually ends up buying a portrait of Raven for like $5,000, which I think is so weird. Why would Alexander sell a picture of her to begin with? And like, wouldn't he be uncomfortable knowing that like someone else owned a picture that he painted of her, especially if he knew it was Trevor the one that ended up with it? Whatever. Coincidentally, or perfectly coincidental, Alexander's parents are there to witness the auction, and they see their son's talent has clearly created a demand within the art market, changing their opinions of him, and they make up. The schism between them is gone. There's this triumphant moment when the parents are waiting to meet a potential buyer because they haven't said anything yet, and it turns out to be Alexander. Of course, they refuse because they don't want him to buy the house. They want him to inherit the house as he should, and they want him to like invest that money in savings or something. I don't know. I thought this was a thoughtful backtrack. It's nice to see in this series, seeing parents own up to their mistakes and apologizing for them. With that, the parents skedaddle to Romania without Alexander, and everything's all good again. Great, cool. Again, this does not leave you with much of a cliffhanger, kind of like other books, but whatever. I hope I'm almost done with this. I'm doing such a bad job at explaining all of these. I'm sorry. I'm trying to follow my notes. All right, so the 7th book, Love Bites. You know, something I've kind of noticed about all these covers compared to like some of the earlier works. I think because it's like it's snapshots of like the same girl, so I'm kind of led to believe, and like this is what the last one looks like. Just from a artistic standpoint here, I'm kind of led to believe that these were all from like the same photo shoot, and that they just use focuses from different angles, and then just covered a filter over them. Whereas like these books, they seemed like they're staged, maybe a little photoshopped. They kind of, this like especially recreates like one of the dresses that she wears. So not, you know, this isn't a design critique. This isn't anything like that. I'm just saying this is just something I've noticed as a person who has done design and artists before. I don't know. Okay, back at it. So, Love Bites. Alright, so another unexpected visitor arrives at the mansion. It's Alexander's best friend, who we haven't heard a word about up until then, Sebastian. I'm not going to get into Sebastian. I feel like I'm getting a lot of mixed visual messages about him, and I just don't have the time nor the expertise to get into it. He is apparently also from Romania, but we don't get a singular drop about his life and his family back home. Overall, he seems like a really cool dude. He travels a lot, and he's in town because he's looking for a place to call home and settle down with somebody. Raven and him get along quite well. There's no rivalry or jealousy between the two. There's like no conflict of like, oh, his best friend, my boyfriend's best friend is gonna take him away from me. Oh, my best friend's girlfriend is gonna take him away from me. There's none of that. Raven's kind of the person who can get along with everybody. Yeah, problems start to happen when Sebastian takes quite a liking to Becky, Raven's best friend. Remember her? By the way, she's dating Matt, Trevor's ex-best friend. I thought I was getting there for a second, but no. They used to be friends, but now they're not, and so Becky and Matt are now going steady together. They seem to form an instant connection, not unlike the one Raven and Alexander had when it was apparently love at first sight. Because, by the way, Alexander and Raven have long, said they love each other. There was no moment. It just happened. It was just a word that entered their vocabulary. I actually wish that interaction had gone somewhere and didn't seem so one-sided. It would have created a more interesting dynamic than just girl meets first boy who shows interest in her, while also humanizing teenage vampires too. I think it would have been interesting to create a parallel with Raven's relationship to Alexander and show that just because you're dating a vampire doesn't mean you necessarily have to become one or start talking about becoming one. I don't mind that it didn't go anywhere though. I thought it created enough conflict to get the job done for what it does. While this is going on, Alexander is being hunted by the press to get an interview with him after his painting sold well at the auction. Self-conscious about being judged for his eclectic lifestyle, Raven and Jameson and Alexander briefly changed the mansion to be more palatable. And by that, they kind of make it more suburban, but they also clean up the place. I don't see why you can't live in a gothic place while also having, a little cleanliness. But Alexander realizes that he shouldn't have to edit himself in order to be accepted, so the plan is ditched, and instead he just charms the pants off the reporter as himself. No, not like that. A big factor in this is to prove that Alexander isn't a vampire, but again, why is vampirism and an alt-fashioned sense synonymous? This is the root to a much larger problem that occurs overarching. Rich people, which Alexander absolutely is, can absolutely be eclectic by nature because they can. That's part of the dynamic between alt clothing and mainstream fashion. Both represent different attitudes towards classism, but I digress. What if there was a cool twist and the reporter that showed up was a vampire and no one suspected? So while they try to keep Sebastian away from Becky, because Sebastian is obsessed with Becky, they try to hook him up with other girls, vampire girls specifically. They invite Onyx and Scarlet to a party without inviting Becky and Matt in the hope Sebastian will get one of the girls. The party gets botched though because Trevor finds out that a party is going on and invites a bunch of other people there, completely defeating the purpose of everything. The whole thing was to get Sebastian to hook up with a vampire, not party with mortals. Becky is, of course, upset that she wasn't included, understandably, but the reasoning kind of gets brushed away. I feel like Alexander and Raven made these decisions for their friends without discussing the potential hypocrisy that they may incite. If all vampires have this instinct they're so afraid of losing control over, what really makes Alexander different? What is he doing differently than other vampires his age? So far, no dire consequences have happened because vampires have been involved, so why should I keep believing there's a reason mortals and vampires can't coexist in platonic or romantic relationships? At no point does Raven ask Becky if she's interested in Sebastian. At no point does Alexander and Sebastian have a talk about the pros and cons of dating a mortal. It seems like both were making choices for their friends. This is kind of reinforced when Luna, Maxwell, shows up at the party and suddenly takes an interest in Sebastian, but it's only because he's Alexander's best friend and she just wants to be close to him. By the end of the party, Sebastian bites Luna, I think, for some reason, apparently, sealing the deal on a relationship, but not. So sometimes biting someone can mean something, but not. And then you can bite vampires again for some reason. I don't know. If anything, it made them look suspicious in front of a bunch of teenagers who saw it. Now, a moral I want to share, perhaps, after reading this book, because I see a lot of the messages I loved are kind of getting diverted from here. I just want to say lust is not love. You can absolutely lust after somebody and still not be in love with them. Lust is not required to love someone. Asexual people do this all the time. It's okay if people want to get together for the sake of getting together, and it's okay if you get with someone and it turns out you don't love them. Not all relationships last forever, and that's okay. It sucks, it hurts when it ends, but it's going to happen, and it's okay for it to happen. Within these stories, there is becoming more and more of an emphasis on true love and love at first sight and getting with the right person, but that's just not realistic. Of all the things here in a world where vampires exist, that's not realistic here. I really wish Becky had actually taken the chance and we could have seen more character development with her. She's still with Matt, because that was kind of the first guy she got with. Same with Raven and Alexander. I get they're their main couple, but there was this emphasis on, like, not asking, like, if because Becky indicated some interest in Sebastian, and I don't know if they were just trying to blame it on vampiric charm. So if that's the case, like, does Raven need to reevaluate her feelings for Alexander? Is that just something vampires do? Because there seemed to be some, like, actual chemistry between Sebastian and Becky. So why not have a conversation about it? Instead, it was all just a matter of, oh no, you have to stay with Matt because there was never really asking what she wanted, and it really felt like the choices were being made for her, and I guess I just would have liked to have seen some maturity in that sense. But I digress. I'm sorry, I'm done being a parent to you right now. We're almost done. I think this will be the longest video. Book 8, Cryptic Cravings. Not long after the last book, it turns out Jagga, Luna, Scarlet, Onyx, and Sebastian never left town like they said they would, and are instead staying at an abandoned mill in Dellsville. Jagger, who apparently opened the Coffin Club in Hipsterville, wants to open a sister club called the Crypt. Here's going back to the issues I had in, like, Kissing Coffin. So if I'm understanding this correctly, if Jagger was in Romania until he left to follow Alexander to the States after ditching the sister at the altar, which was about a year ago at this point, how did he open the Coffin Club? Was it brand spanking new when Raven visited in Kissing Coffins? I was under the impression that it had been there for a while and had a long, like, standing customer relations, but I could be mistaken. Geography aside, isn't Jagger supposed to be like 17, 18 at this point? So that means he would have opened this club when he was like 15 or 16. Is his family rich too? Is that just a vampire thing, being rich? Is that how he could do this? His family's money to borrow to open this club? These are little obnoxious details that I can't, like, that still bother me. I can't help but think about. I don't know how much it was thought about as well. Anyway, Raven is very excited at the prospect of this new club opening. The only big debate is whether or not to open it to vampires as well. There's an argument against it because the town is so small. If a hint of gossip starts, the whole town starts talking, which has happened in the series so far, so it's a very realistic threat and a very real possibility. Jagger, for some reason, still wants to go through with the idea, and there's a secret door that leads to a lower level, like the dungeon, but it's not so secret. Like, everyone, like, he can't just keep saying, oh, it's nothing. Everyone kind of starts getting suspicious about it at some point. Now, is this a place for vampires to like room and board while in town, to have like their own safe space like at the Coffin Club? Is it to keep vampires from partying too hard with mortals so there's no temptation? It seems like, in theory, actually a really good idea to have a separate area. But no, his goal is mainly to make a room that's for covenant ceremonies, because they're still on about that. Okay. I don't know why they're so hung about this whole bonding for eternity. Are they really just that bored and lonely? I'm kind of losing my patience with that whole plot line for them. There's this really cute scene where Alexander and Raven celebrate their birthdays and the gifts they get each other. I like the descriptions of their dates and their love language for each other. It's one of the best parts about the series because it's so wholesome and thoughtful. They're very considerate of each other in a way that shows that they actually think about the other person's needs rather than their own. That's just a tidbit. Meanwhile, Luna and Sebastian are still going strong, but it becomes more and more apparent that she's just with him to get closer to Alexander. The question of Raven's mortality is brought up through all of this. A lot of guys, vampire guys, are saying things that like they wouldn't have waited so long to turn a girl if that they were with. Raven is questioning it too, but what she is not continuing to question is her life beyond high school. And again, not to get all mom, which she hasn't even finished school, by the way. She's still like a junior. This book could have been a great conversation of when Jagger, previously thought villainous character, shows his ambition in being a business owner and how that could have inspired Raven. Same when Alexander met with the reporter in the last book. These were great jumping off points for her to think about herself. If Jagger's so good at what he does, and she's apparently on good terms with him, why not see what kind of connections he has? She doesn't have to give anything up to still be with Alexander and plan for their future. I was really, really hoping that by the end of this book, she would have a plan for herself, but she's still so hung up about being turned. At some point through all of this, Becky finds out that vampires are real and freaks out, understandably so. Honestly, I don't get how more people haven't put the dots together. Why Raven decided to wait so long seems odd. If she herself wants to be a vampire someday, she's going to have this conversation anyway. I don't think she's even thought about how she'd tell her family, which would be a way bigger deal than telling her best friend. The book ends when it's found out that Jagger and Luna were planning to perform a covenant ceremony with Sebastian without his consent. This is obviously a deal breaker for a lot of people since the two are still up to no good. I'm not surprised. That's kind of their thing. This weird obsession of bonding for eternity with people, but it's not rooted in actually like love or care, which is why like I don't understand why Raven isn't putting the same thought and care into about this. This isn't a lightness. This isn't like just something she can do. This is an irreversible life choice that she's making, and I wish she would treat it like that. There's a lot of things you do for the aesthetic, but literally change the course of your life from mortal to immortal is one you really shouldn't. We're here. We've come all this way. We're finally at it. The last book, Immortal Hearts. It's a bit thicker than the other books, so to say. I think this is a little over 250 pages or so. I was really excited seeing this because I thought it would be more of what I loved. This is going to be the hardest to talk about because it's the one I have the biggest problem. It's a culmination of many things gathered into one. The premise of this book is that Alexander's 12-year-old sister, Athena, nicknamed Stormy, is visiting from Romania. Yet again, not a single vowel has been said about her, even mentioning her, not even by the parents. See, it would have been at the dinner party at the Madison's house. It would have been perfect to reveal that they had another child. That you know, uh, their youngest is staying with family back home in Romania, and maybe they're eager to get back. I don't know. This is the least of my problems here with this book. So let's shelf that for a bit. So the sister is coming to visit, and it turns out she was close to Luna Maxwell. For some reason, when Luna was mortal, she would babysit Stormy, who was born a vampire. So how that worked, okay, whatever. So justifiably, Raven's nervous that she's not going to like her, and instead want to spend all her time with Luna. She arrives, and of course, she dresses gothic, alt, just like Valentine, a fellow vampiric 12-year-old. Now, I want to emphasize, I do not have a problem with this. I do not have a problem with this fashion sense. I do not have a problem with that lifestyle. I think it is so cool. I think it is so refreshing. I completely support it. What I have a problem with it in this book is that we have yet to see a cast of diverse vampires in anywhere. I'm not even beginning to scratch like ethnicity, sexuality, anything like that. I'm just, there hasn't been a single blonde vampire. There hasn't been a single mailman vampire. There hasn't been a single lawyer vampire. You couldn't even do that, a lawyer vampire. Nothing at all like that. I understand, like, Raven, because she grew up with her hippie parents and loved watching vintage horror movies, so she grew up into a 90s, early 2000s goth kid. That makes sense of why she has the tastes that she does. Yet everyone else who dresses similarly seems to do so just because they are vampires. And no other reason for it. So that's the problem I brought up before. These are like, synonymous with each other. Like, can you honestly remember being 12? Like, what 12-year-old has an ears full of piercings and wears ripped tights and corset dresses? Like, 12-year-old, there's nothing dark and mysterious about a 12-year-old. I hate to break it to you. They're kids. They're dorky little kids. And they deserve to be, because that's a part of childhood. They're children. They deserve to be goofy and act like themselves. I think any kid would, be wearing like a Star Wars T-shirt or a Rick and Morty T-shirt or something. I don't know. It's just something that really bothers me. But on top of all of that, I still would not have a problem with them dressing and stuff like that if other characters and people in the story who dress similarly weren't always referred to as sexy. A lot of outfits worn by teenagers, by the way, 16, 17 at most, maybe 18, are described as sexy or seductive. And that's where my problem really comes from. There is absolutely no reason Stormy couldn't have been aged up, with very little in the plot, if anything, changing. I hope I've made myself clear there. It's not that I don't think 12-year-olds wouldn't be into this, it's that the fact that older characters who are still like 16, 17 have been described wearing like ripped tights, leather jackets, have been described as sexy, and then you have 12-year-olds wearing, eyeliner and piercings and corset dresses and mini skirts. Do you see that? Am I making myself clear here on the parallels of my discomfort? I hope so. I hope I made myself clear. And then the line that ruined it all for me. Oh, this was the pin drop. This was the other shoe. This was the accumulation. This is when I was truly let down. I've been dreading this moment. The line that ruined it all for me the moment the series became very, very, very flawed. So it happens when Alexander and Raven take Stormy, a 12-year-old, to the Crypt, a club, to meet up with Sebastian and Luna so that, Stormy can see Luna again. Page 76. Even though she clearly wanted to be treated like an adult, Sebastian grabbed her like she was a child and she shrieked in his embrace as if she was one. "How are you?" he asked, setting her down. "I'm fabulous," she said. "Still have those braces?" he teased. "Yes, but I'll be getting them off soon." "I think I like them on you. The purple and black bands are sexy." Stormy giggled with delight. Ah, ah. Here's my note from that. You see that? Nope. 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 Not appropriate. Nope, not appropriate at all whatsoever. When I first read that, I almost put the book down. I almost stopped completely. I had to take a moment. Let me iterate this here. In no situation, scenario, context should a 12-year-old, and she is 12, I checked, have any accessory or part about them be described as sexy. Big no. And this isn't the only offense in that. Ooh, we've come a long way. We've come a long way. I didn't expect to where this was going. I haven't even gotten it. Hold on, it's not the last time that this problem even happens. And this isn't even the last time a problem like that happens. Raven, my absolute favorite character, makes a comment about Alexander, about what if they had met when they were their kids. Page 130. "Yes, but I'm happy that I met you at all." "Me too." I leaned in and gave him a juicy kiss. "I bet you were so hot when you were 12. I stroked his face. No, 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 no. Here's my note for that, by the way. No. Okay. I'm not trying to make excuses of here, but these scenes left in this book are huge flaws in this book, that this was a rushed final product. These are really things an editor should have caught. If an editor did indeed read over this, I would consider context like these huge mistakes. These should have been changed. I think the first draft or second draft, a point was trying to be made. They were trying to get something done for a deadline, and this was glanced over. But I think if someone actually looked over these, and I think if an editor actually really took the time and their patience with this, they would have asked it to be changed. There is honestly no justification for these things to be in the story. There is none. And this is the only book where this happens in, by the way. I don't get a hint of it in any other. So can you not see my heartbreak here? I had such high hopes for this, and then weird shit like that happens in it. The quality of the story goes downhill fast around literally the halfway point from this. With so little time left, there are some story threads that just aren't wrapped up, like Jameson and Ruby's relationship, how the Coffin Club is doing since the owner transfer, and Aunt Livy and Devin's relationship, but whatever, that's not what the story's about. By the way, Billy figures out that vampires are real, and she knows about Stormy and Alexander. Again, how nobody put more pieces together sooner is beyond me. Raven really should have seen this coming sooner, especially when the kid did a whole science project on vampirism. Again, this was a subject that would have come up sooner or later, but even to the very, very last page, this is not an issue. Raven and Becky make a promise to each other that they'll always still be friends no matter what the future holds, and it is a really nice, touching moment. I'm so glad this friendship held value over all this time. In other stories, platonic friendship would have, taken a hard backseat over the main romance. There is this sort of intense moment when Raven confronts Alexander and essentially demands to know if and when she'll ever be turned. It was the first moment I disliked Raven, and I thought Alexander's reaction was utterly justified. He was completely in the right. It seemed like that's all she really cared about. That kind of peer pressure from her was just really not normal. She says this isn't an ultimatum, but what would she have done if Alexander had told her no, like this wasn't going to happen? It was really kind of setting it up like she wouldn't want to be with him if that's what his decision was. That's how she kind of voiced it. She wanted this to happen one way or another. This is why I desperately wished her character placed emphasis on her own self-betterment and achievement. I wish the end goal wasn't to be just a vampire, but her own person. There was a lot of signs pointing to her growth, but with the end on the horizon, that was completely cut short. She could have literally had it all. She could have had her little vampiric cake and ate it too. After their fight, when he leaves her alone in the front on her doorstep, Raven is upset and she searches all over town for him in the pouring rain. She eventually finds him at the cemetery, at his grandmother's grave, where in the midst of her apology, he completely backtracks on his argument and decides that tomorrow they're gonna do it. Turn her into a vampire, I mean. Don't mistake that. Yep, after all his arguments against it, after all of his rationing behind it, he decides to go through with it. She just turned 18. She hasn't finished high school. She still lives with her parents, but yeah, they're gonna do it. Yay. They want to do it soon, by the way, because they want Stormy to be there since she's leaving next week or something. I have no idea why Alexander couldn't have just called his parents and told them what was happening, or simply planned a later time when his sister and parents could attend. Now, see, that little line in the book, when they make this decision, leads me to believe that there was actually supposed to be another book after this to complete the series, like even 10, but something changed, so they needed to rework this. There's this shopping montage with Becky for dresses. She tells all her teachers she appreciates them. She sees Trevor one more time, and she tells her parents she loves them. It really all happens that fast, this sequence of events after they make the decision. That careful pacing I praised so heavily in the first book, it's literally the moment everything has been building up for, and it is so rushed. The ceremony they have is supposed to be have 2 or 3 people there as witness, but somehow through a terrible plot line, almost everybody shows up. Trevor crashes it because he's still obsessed with Raven, so he dyed his hair black and put on fake fangs to trick her, pretend to bite her. I don't know. It was the dumbest thing ever, and it makes no sense whatsoever. Luna, Jagger, and Valentine show up because why? Onyx, Scarlet are there. So is Becky, Matt. But then Billy and Henry are too. It's all so awkward. And not nearly as romantic as it should have been. Literally, the last few sentences of it is when Raven is bitten and she senses she has changed, and she and Alexander are bonded for eternity. That's it. That's all there is to it. No delving into her life after. No, epilogue about the future. It's just the series ends the moment fangs meet neck, and that's it. You don't even know. Yeah, it did not happen how I would have liked. Let me put up my, let me grab my finale notes here. Okay, so in conclusion, let's get to the conclusion part of this. If there's any parts to this, I don't know. I'm a terrible mess when it comes to organizing my thoughts. So, in my opinion, this is a very well and tightly written series. An excellent blend of dialogue and description, Relative information was given in a way that added context, not info dumping. I loved all of the descriptions of outfits, makeup, and accessories. It gives me very early 2000s goth alt scene. I loved it. I loved every moment of it. Excellent world building and stage setting. Raven is a likable main character. She has an established personality outside of her relationship. She's independent, witty, clever, reflective, and empathetic. She's not bitter or resentful toward people for treating her differently. She's actually a very open person. For as much as she feels she's rejected, she doesn't really reject anyone except Trevor, but that's because he's arrogant and manipulative. She's really content to live and let live, and that's refreshing because bitterness could have been part of the plotline. She's her own person by her own definition, not anyone else's, so she doesn't lose herself when she gets in a relationship. If anything, she becomes more thoughtful of people's differences after she starts dating Alexander. She doesn't lose her other relationships when her romantic one begins. She still hangs out with Becky. She still has a good relationship with her parents, and she includes her little brother in a lot. She even makes friends outside of her circle of interests, like Ruby from Armstrong Travel, Matt, Becky's boyfriend, Jack, that guy from the beginning of the book who owns the department of the store. This really helped round out the world, giving it more dimension. Even Trevor, the supposed antagonist, has his moments of humanization. Alexander is a compelling love interest. He's considerate, he's thoughtful, he's respectful. He isn't overbearing or possessive over Raven's time and space. He never intentionally crosses boundaries or makes excuses for behavior with anyone. He's honestly a walking green flag. He's by no means a bad boy other than being a vampire. He actively embraces situations like going on romantic dates, going to school dances, or going to the carnival. He's not too cool for anything and never acts like he's above anyone. He also doesn't passively reject people different from himself. He likes making new friends. The last book was so rushed. I suspect there was supposed to be a 10th and final book, but that didn't happen, so everything needed to be wrapped up. This rushed pacing doesn't appear in any other book. I was so disappointed it ended on the note it did. I really wish Raven could have grown more and realized that while she always wanted to be a vampire was a fun theory, that's still not a life goal. Alexander doesn't live to be a vampire or immortal. He's driven by his passion for art. Now that she's a vampire, what's next? I wish a career or aspiration had taken the forefront and becoming a vampire was just a bonus. What if she realized while working at a publishing company or a print company that the long nights as an editor just so happened to align with the nocturnal habits of a vampire? She should have absolutely waited until she moved out of her parents' house at the very least. Being a vampire before getting accepted to college is a huge flaw in her future. Visiting campuses, class scheduling, office hours. The promise she made with Becky, which was so endearing, is basically impossible at this point. She throws it out by the end of the book. If becoming a vampire doesn't stop the aging process, then there should, in theory, be no rush. They could have gotten an apartment together and finished college. Then they could have gotten married and on their wedding night changed her. Alexander loves hearing about her life during the day, even though they wish they could be together. So again, what is the rush besides just kind of young love here? Because of feeling like an outcast, Raven seemed to have this ability to actually bring out the best in people. She connects really well with anyone. So instead of this focus on getting people into romantic relationships, I wish there was an emphasis of self-love and self-acceptance. A huge problem with Jagger and Luna seemed like they lacked connections with others. Luna didn't need a boyfriend. She needed to feel accepted by herself and her family. She was already self-conscious being born mortal among vampires, so of course she would feel absolutely awful being rejected by Alexander, even though he did do the right thing. Even Trevor was in dire need of being understood. That would have been a much stronger theme than romance alone. Sebastian himself didn't need a girlfriend. He needed a community and he needed purpose. The lack of diversity, not even mentioning racial, and vampires was boring. Literally every vampire was gothic, punk, alt, or vice versa, and from Romania. No one spoke anything but English in conversations or was alluded to having spoken a second language besides the occasional accent. There seemed to be no appreciation for the country's culture other than that's apparently where vampires come from. I've gone to this in length, but like even the preteens had dyed hair, pierced ears, and eyeliner. You know, what about a vampire kid who loves science fiction, or a little girl who loves dinosaurs, a blonde preppy vampire, a janitor vampire? The sexualization of the goth alt scene clothing made the fact that the kids dressed alt really, really weird and made me uncomfortable. I rolled my eyes when reading the description of Valentine. That's where my notes end. I could go on. I think I've spoken my piece about it. I think I've gotten my point across. This is very long, and I don't know how it's going to look edited. Yeah. So overall, I am disappointed that these turned out the way they did. They had the potential to be so much more, and they weren't. And you know what? That's okay. Better that they're here, I suppose, than never to have shown up at all. Is this story still near and dear to my heart? Yes. Would I still recommend Vampire Kisses? Absolutely. Would I recommend it over a lot of things that are popular right now? Sure. The first book I think will always keep its place in my heart, but that ending, that really changed it for me, and I wish it hadn't. But what are you gonna do? I have not looked into Ellen Schreiber or her any of her other work. If she's done recent work, I feel like based on these, she would do really well as a young adult or new age adult writer, because her style is just so good. Her characterization of Raven was truly memorable, and I'm still happy that, you know, from all my criticisms of this, it didn't taint that experience from me. They can't take that away. If you have read this series, be it when you were a teenager or as an adult, or if you read it just for the first time, let me know what you think. I've never discussed this with anybody, and I would be so open to talking with someone or hearing their opinion about it. Did you think I was on point about some of the arguments I made about some characters? Do you love this series front to back? I would truly be interested in knowing and understanding, because I can totally see the appeal to these. And honestly, if I was younger again, I don't think I'd come up with the same criticisms that I do now. Hindsight is 2020. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna wrap this up. Thank you so much for tuning in on this. I'm sorry once again that this was a pretty rambling video. I'm still working on it. Yeah, that's it. Bye.